What's up with the deal? It's just truly Mr. PSA. I am the public Sony's announcers on Instagram. I am Sony Reviewed It on YouTube. Today, we are doing a reaction review video of Scott Sandspider traveling with Korean Airlines. Let's see his experience, and I'm going to give you guys my expert analysis, being I am in the airline industry, give you guys a couple of tips.
Korean Air 7478 business class, prestige class, was easily one of my best airline experiences of the past few years. In this video, I'm going to show you what the experience is like on both the lower deck and the upper deck. It's going to be lower deck on the 6-hour red-eye from Singapore to Seoul, and then upper deck on the 13-hour long haul from Seoul to Atlanta. I did this all in one shot, actually, with just a 2.5-hour layover in Seoul, which is why I'm combining both of these reviews into one video. This is going to be a good one. Really. Hey everyone, it's Scott from Sandspider.com again, coming to you from gate G21, Terminal 2, Singapore Changi Airport. And yeah, we're just getting right into this because there's a lot to cover in this video, and I actually wasn't even planning on making a video for this segment because this was scheduled to be a Boeing 777-300ER, but they swapped it out to a Boeing 747-8 about 24 hours before departure time. And there's just no way that I would have been able to resist not making a video about this. So, yeah, welcome to the 747. My seat for the flight up to Seoul this evening is 10A, which is a window seat at pretty much the back of the business class cabin on the lower deck. It's a fairly spacious business class product, except for getting into it. You kind of got to suck that gut in, but once you're in, it's real nice. Now, I have flown Korean Air business class before, and as a matter of fact, it was only a few months prior to this on the Boeing 777-300ER, and this is the same seat, although I didn't do a window seat last time. This is the first time doing a window seat, and I quite like this. Anyway, all the amenities look to be about the same, and I do realize that I'm blasting through all this stuff without very much description, but don't worry, I'll explain everything in much more detail on the Seoul to Atlanta flight. But for this particular flight, the only thing I wanted to do was sleep, and maybe do a little eating, maybe, but...
Long-haul flights, when you're flying from Seoul to Atlanta, you're gonna get headphones. Those headphones actually, fun fact, they have to go back. You can't take them home. If you take them home, well, they can't really, you can't use them because the two plugins are like two plugins like that. They're not like your single plug headphones, so those have to go back. They do offer you like a little kit. It's got a toothbrush in it. It's got slippers in it. So that little kit you can take home. And I always say on these flights, you need to ask questions. Never, ever be afraid to ask questions, because these flights that Scott is staying in, the range of prices from $8,000 to $20,000. Now, how can you fly on a plane like this and save? You basically have points. For every airline has credit card, which can give you points, and the more you travel international, you actually gain points to the point where that instead of that flight being $8,000, it could go down to like $1,500, depending on points.
Priority number one was getting some rest, charging my batteries, and getting ready for the long trip ahead. Scheduled departure time for this flight was supposed to be 10:30 p.m. We're about 20 minutes late at this point, but these things don't matter all that much when they do an aircraft swap to a 747 from a 777. I'm never...
So aircraft swap, a lot of you guys might know this, it could mean that the original aircraft had to get maintenance done to it. So since the original aircraft has to get maintenance done, they swap it out and give you guys another one. Or it could be anything, maintenance, or something's damaged on there, or after the pilots do a walkthrough, they see that something's wrong, and the airline will never put you in jeopardy to put you on a plane that has faulty. Anything that's faulty, that's not working that well, the airline will do what they call aircraft swap.
We're not going to complain about that. Plus, I had a 2.5-hour layover in Seoul, so I was well protected at this point. I wasn't worried about missing my flight. It was just a matter of trying to conserve as much energy as possible, because these kinds of trips are just absolutely brutal. Even if you're doing it in business class or first class, it's really hard to go halfway around the world all in one shot. And I think that's something that some people don't really understand when they watch these kind of videos, especially if they don't have any travel experience. All I gotta say to that is, this is a lot more exhausting than it looks. Really. Anyway, things are going generally well so far. We're not too far off schedule. And, yeah. These powered seat dividers are the best. I'm actually kind of surprised they offered a full meal service on this flight, considering how late we departed. But I wasn't going to turn it down, even though it might have been slightly dangerous, because
If you have any kind of food allergies or you can't have certain foods, upon buying your airplane ticket, you can actually make a request that they give you certain kind of food. So that is a possibility. If you have any allergies, always, as you're buying your ticket, make sure you talk to the airlines or call the airlines and tell them that you prefer fish, rice, or whatever, and they will accommodate to you.
I wasn't feeling very good at this point. This was at the very end of a week-long Asia trip, and I had eaten so much good food over the past week. I had way overindulged. My stomach had been absolutely decimated, and let's just say that I was not 100%. That didn't stop me from choosing the bibimbap. I think I pronounced that right. Bibimbap. It's a traditional Korean dish, which I typically always get when flying Korean Airlines. And as typical with Korean Air, absolutely phenomenal. Everything was fresh. The rice was like it was just cooked. And this stuff right here, hot pepper sauce, I ain't touching that. But this sesame oil, on the other hand, this seems like it would be a little bit gentler on my ailing stomach, but in general, I was a little bit worried about eating so much right before a big trip, being trapped on an airplane for so long, but yeah, sometimes you just gotta go with the flow and hope for the best. As far as seat comfort goes, I'll have a lot more to say about that on the next segment, but for now, all I'm going to say is that the footwell in these seats is a little tight. Well, that didn't last long. I did manage to get a few hours of sleep, but it just wasn't enough. Travel is brutal, folks, no matter whether you're doing it in business class or first class. I fully stand by what I said earlier about it being difficult sometimes. But, yeah, it was a continental breakfast for breakfast. But actually, this I very much appreciated because my stomach was still not feeling great. And I probably wouldn't have eaten anything substantial, like a plate of eggs or pancakes or whatever. So just having a glass of juice and a croissant, which honestly wasn't all that fresh. But it was light, which is basically all you want when you're not banging on all cylinders. I didn't mention it earlier, but the scheduled flying time for this flight was a very short 6 hours and 18 minutes, and they pretty much stuck to it. By the time we began our descent, we were only about 10 minutes late, so they did make up some time while in the air, which, yeah, I guess is okay, but I definitely could have used a little bit more sleep. Anyway, lower deck here on the 747-8 Korean Air Prestige class. Maybe one of the things that I like about it more than the upper deck is the fact that it's a really big cabin. The ceiling is very high, it's very wide, obviously, and it just feels very spacious compared to the upper deck, which you'll see. I mean, some people like that confined space upstairs, but there's just something to be said about sitting in a very large open area. Anyway, welcome to Seoul. It is 6:10 a.m., the weather is absolutely perfect, and I have still got a very long way to go. All right, welcome to Terminal 2 at Incheon Airport in Seoul. And you know what? I'm actually not feeling all that bad at this point, despite my lack of sleep and my sour stomach. But first order of business, I'm going to check out the lounge, not to eat, but to get a shower. And just for clarification, lounge access is included whenever you're flying Korean Air business class, whether you pay cash or miles or whatever. So take advantage of it.
Lounge access, like Scott is saying, is included for Korean Air. If you're traveling, most airlines, if you're traveling international or you're traveling domestics to New York, LA, the bigger cities, they do grant you lounge access. So that's something you should think about. So if you're traveling United, American, Delta, those three, if you buy a ticket first class, it does give you lounge access. Now, being in the lounge, there's plenty of food, drinks, fruits, and you can eat as much as you can.
Especially here at Incheon Airport, because this lounge is pretty good. It's not excellent, but it's good, and that includes the food, which I'm not going to show you today because I'm still not feeling all that great. I'm connecting to Korean Air flight number 35, by the way. It has a scheduled departure time of 9:50 a.m., which is coming up soon-ish. I had some time to kill, which is not a big problem here at the Incheon Airport because it's beautiful. I love connecting here. It's a great airport with lots of great food, excellent views. And speaking of which, this is the 747-8 that is going to be taking me to Atlanta today. It's registration HL7638, which, after doing a little research, I found that it's about 8 years old, which may seem relatively young, but unfortunately, these 747s are not going to be in the Korean Air fleet for very much longer. So if you want to get a ride on one, you're going to have to do it soon. Anyway, it's going to be gate 267 today, which, oddly enough, this is the exact same gate that I flew out of last time I was here, which was just 3 months prior. It was a flight to Seattle. Maybe you've seen that video. And I kind of find it funny that of all the gates here in Terminal 2 at Incheon Airport, how did it end up being the same one? As I said in my written review over on sandspotter.com, it's kind of like flying Southwest Airlines twice and ending up in the exact same 737 both times. How does that even happen? Whatever. They got the boarding process started pretty much on time. The way they do it on Korean Air is pretty much like any other airline. They start with people needing assistance first, families, and then first class, business class, then economy, and all the different zones. I was actually one of the first on board. I guess there wasn't that many first class passengers, so they got straight to business class. And yeah, this looks familiar, doesn't it? Lower deck first, walk through that, all the way back to the stairs, and then up the stairs, and boom, there you go, upper deck.
Fun fact, Korean Air is one of the only airlines that I still know that only has the upper deck. A lot of airlines don't have the upper deck. So like Scott was saying, if you really want to get the experience of flying a plane with 2 decks, Korean Air is the airline that you want to go with.
On the Boeing 747-8 Prestige class on Korean Air. Welcome to seat 19A. As you might expect, this is the exact same seat that you saw in the previous segment, though it seems a little bit narrower due to the smaller cabin up here. It's a 2-2 configuration as opposed to a 2-2-2 configuration downstairs, so it's definitely a little more cozy up here. I'm liking this a lot. There's really not all that much to complain about. If I had to complain about anything, maybe it would be how narrow these seats are, but with all that leg room, it doesn't really matter. Anyway, this is a typically highly featured business class seat. You've got power outlets and cubby holes everywhere, a decent control panel for the seat, And most importantly, a wired remote control for the entertainment system, which you will need because you're not going to be able to reach the video screen. Also included is a very well-stocked amenity kit, which I didn't get on the last segment, which didn't really matter since I slept most of the time anyway. But yeah, this is typical Korean Air. This dental kit is definitely going to come in handy, but I'm not so sure about this hairbrush. I don't think I'll be needing that. Otherwise, it's a decent amenity kit, perfect for a 13-hour flight in my opinion. They also gave us a pair of the typical Korean Air slippers, which are always comfy, and the menu was at the seat upon boarding as well. I'll show you that later. We've got some pre-departure snacks here, and I went with water, just to be safe. And there you have it. That pretty much concludes the boarding process. And I'll tell you what, being upstairs here on the 747 is very unique. It's very different compared to what it was like downstairs, especially here at the window seat. There's a lot more storage and a little bit more space too due to how the walls curve into the cabin. I'm quite liking this, though I will admit that it feels a little bit like a 737, which might be a problem for a 13-hour flight. We'll see. It's 9:32 a.m. local time as we're pushing off the gate here, and that put us about 12 minutes behind schedule so far, which I didn't even notice because, well, 747, upper deck, long haul. It's kind of hard to be in a salty mood in situations such as this. Anyway, as we're getting pushed off the gate here, I want to go back to what I was saying earlier about the 747s and how they're not likely to be in the Korean Air fleet for very much longer. Based on the research that I've done, it appears that most of them will be gone by the end of 2025. I believe they're going to hold on to one cargo aircraft, but all of the passenger aircraft are on their way out, which is a total bummer because it's an extremely unique experience. Only two other airlines operate the 747-8, that would be Lufthansa and Air China, so once the Korean Air birds are gone, those will be your only two options. Speaking of doomed Korean Air aircraft, I was not expecting to see this during the taxi out to the runway. What a shame. On a lighter note, I'm having a pretty good time so far. Not only am I extremely comfortable, the sounds that this thing makes remind me a lot of the Boeing 737 MAX 8. These are completely different engines than what are on the 747-400, and if I'm being honest, it's kind of weird to hear a 747 sound so modern and mean. This is cool. Those of you who want to watch the full taxi and takeoff, unedited, with all the sound, need to head over to my other channel, where I post that kind of stuff. And yeah, I definitely recommend checking it out. It was a good one. And now begins the process of settling in for what is going to be a very long and hopefully good 13-hour flight. I've got my slippers and the very familiar Korean Air blanket. This thing is really heavy, really comfortable, but past experience has taught me that I'm probably not going to need this considering how warm they keep the cabin temperature. It's nice to have though. Headphones are decent, typical Korean Air. They're alright. Not everything can be totally awesome, I guess. Here's the menu that I promised to show you earlier, and I'm happy to report that it's very different from the one that you saw in my video from the flight from Seoul to Seattle a few months ago. Everything looks good. Too good, actually. First up is the pre-drink service, not to be confused with the appetizer. It's oven-dried tomato with olive, and yeah, it was good. Maybe a little more Italian than Korean, but it was decent. Next up was this salad with smoked salmon, some tomato, some onions, a little bit of salad. It was good. Very well seasoned and overall very easy on my stomach. And now, the main course. This is Korean-style chilled acorn chili and rice soup served with bulgogi beef and some side dishes. Kimchi as well. A bold choice for someone with a sour stomach, admittedly. But just as with the meal on my previous segment, everything was ultra fresh, ultra good, no complaints from me, just perfect. I probably ate more than I should have, all things considered, but I couldn't resist going with a little bit of dessert, which started off with some fresh fruit and even a cheese plate. I did have the strength to resist the ice cream, though. It was difficult, but I did it. As I mentioned earlier, the in-flight entertainment system here in Korean Air business class on the 747, actually all of their aircraft, it's a little bit different. You're not supposed to reach out and touch it, unlike what I'm showing here. I'm just doing this for the video. It's actually designed to be interacted with using the remote control that I showed you earlier. It's a much more comfortable experience just sitting back using the remote. It's fairly responsive. It's a little laggy, but it's okay. I've heard a lot of people complain about how narrow these seats are. I actually quite like that because it makes it feel a little bit more cozy, and getting the seat set up for sleep is pretty easy actually, which is inconvenient if you have to go to the bathroom all of a sudden. But that's no big deal because I needed to include this in the review anyway, so here you go. There are actually 2 full-size lavatories up here on the upper deck, which is really convenient. Anyway, with that out of the way, I am back at my seat, getting situated, feeling really sleepy, and hungry. Dang it. Thankfully, the cabin crew on this flight was absolutely fantastic. They were active the entire time, and ending up with this plate of cookies was as simple as ringing the flight attendant call button. The problem is, now I've got a sugar high that I need to go walk off. Dang it. They flipped on the cabin lights about 2.5 hours prior to landing in Atlanta for initiation of the second meal service. And even though I think I could have used a little bit more sleep,
As you can tell here, once you're on the aircraft and you are sleeping, they will dim the lights all the way down for them to give you food. They'll actually turn their lights on just a little bit bright, just so it can wake you up. It's just a little technique that the airline use, just because a lot of people, when you're traveling, you don't know. So once all the lights go, it doesn't get too dark, but it gets dark. But what they'll do is, for every meal service, they'll dim the lights up and they'll turn the lights on, and then they'll begin the meal service. Also, if you're sitting in business class, first class, you can have them wake you up if you're sleeping. So that's something you can also do. How do you do that? Basically, you talk to your crew, you talk to the flight attendant, the lead one, and just tell them, hey, if I'm taking a nap, the last meal you guys are serving, please wake me up. And what they'll do is they will come by and wake you up. I like to tell people, you gotta communicate when you're traveling. You gotta communicate. If you don't communicate, the crew can't help you. If you have any medical conditions that you need something, you gotta communicate with the crew.
I slept 7 solid hours, at least. Anyway, I decided to do something a little bit different for this pre-landing meal service. It's very rare that I would ever choose the Western option on an Asian airline, but I was just in that kind of mood, I guess. And my stomach was definitely feeling much better by this point, so I was feeling slightly more adventurous. Which is kind of funny because what I'm about to show you was probably the most mild thing on the entire menu. So here we go, the main course. Roasted chicken thigh with pesto cream sauce served with potato and vegetables. Does it get any more Atlanta than this? Probably not, but I'm kind of glad that I went with this just to see how a Korean airline does American food. And yeah, this was pretty good. Everything seemed fresh, fairly well prepared, very well seasoned. Didn't taste like a microwave meal at all, but thinking back on it, I probably would have went with the bibimbap, just because. And finally, for dessert, I went with the safe and easy option, which was the fresh fruit. Boring, but very easy on the stomach. So, this is it. At this point, I had spent about 19 hours in Korean Air 747-8 business class, both on the upper deck and the lower deck. So, I've got a lot to say about this. First of all, I think the upper deck experience is definitely a more private and cozy experience overall. However, it may be a bit too claustrophobic for some people. Now, I'm not all that claustrophobic, but there were some points during the flight that I just felt a little bit too closed in, a little bit too contained, and that's why I was going to say that I prefer the lower deck more, but I think on a shorter flight, maybe 10 hours on the upper deck would have been the sweet spot. That would have been perfect. But it gets to a point where spending so much time in a confined space gets to be too much, at least for me anyway, and I don't know. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that, to me, the lower deck feels more spacious and luxurious, and the upper deck feels more private and exclusive. So, take your pick. Anyway, welcome to Atlanta. What an awesome flight. I think we're about 7 minutes behind schedule at this point, and
Once again, a big shout outs to Scott and Sandspotter. So that is the Korean airline experience. As always, just travel. And as you're traveling, always ask questions. Always ask questions. If you don't ask questions, the airline crew can't help you. If you have any questions, ask. As always, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Sony reviewed it, as we are on our way to 1 million subscribers. Let's get it. I can't do it myself. Until next time, world, happy birthday to anybody out there.